So, you know, applications you want to run on the Chromebook, that come from the Chromebook.
Oh, okay, so there's a difference in that. Are they similar to the one which I did?
Generally,
Your
yeah, and anything that can run on the web, you know, so there's, you know,
And this is
software.
archived? It's like,
Yes.
hang it on
Yeah.
here. Oh, that's great.
Is just hang out on air.
Right,
So-
right, it's archived.
The reason for that is that it
And
not only goes straight to YouTube,
so
and I don't need to spend hours encoding and decoding everything, and it stays in a YouTube account with a mailing list, video list that says NovaLUG, so all our videos for the last year and a half, 2 years are in there.
Search, Google Calendar, Gmail, YouTube.
Some of them better qualities than others, sound-wise, video-wise, but
I'll talk a
they're
little
there.
louder. 'Cause-
Google Slides, Google Maps, Play
It's-
Music, Google Plus.
it's directional. It's pretty good at picking your voice up.
Okay.
But I'm gonna try to see if I can see any problems.
I don't want to give up my Evernote app.
That's why-
But if you go all the way over there, we will have a problem.
And, as long as you sign into your account through the Chrome web browser.
Oh, and how wide is the video?
I see the end of that TV and the end of that.
Oh, really? Oh, that's great. That's very good.
Maybe a problem, but it is
So trying to
convenient.
do something the
I
other
mean,
day.
so basically, I same regardless of whether I'm on my Windows machine or on the Chromebook or.
The tablet or the phone or, yeah.
Okay. Still have people showing up. Which is good.
Not quite starting, I'm using my own
Around, yeah.
It's to your right, but that way. But, yeah, so, you know, apps, extensions, themes.
Well, if you run out of chairs, you can bring in chairs from outside.
Here, I can actually share chairs.
I'm trying to do hours, it's a bit smaller. Yeah, maybe I'll get the small ones.
Have a chair.
Maybe.
That's kind of why I still want to. There you go.
Your home line.
Takoma Park, in Maryland. No, but, no, I did talk to you before.
Okay.
Let me grab the monitor, it's actually a prop.
That's a prop. Pretty common one, that's just lots of
Yeah.
shows.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have this, Peter, as a little
Yes.
prop, that I want to point to.
I can move the camera if you need to.
Okay.
It's up to you,
I can just
whatever
lift
you,
it up.
just do your show and I will try to make sure
Okay, I can lift it up. I'll just lift it up to show you.
Sure. Well, I think the time says 10 o'clock. Do we want to wait for some more strikers to come in, or you think you're going to use all 2 hours?
I don't think I'm going to use all 2 hours. In fact, part of this is going to be just an interesting conversation. So, I have some interesting kind of stories to share and some ideas. And
But we're online, so, I mean, our illustrious leader, Greg, won't be here today, and from what I see, he had nothing he wants us to talk about, except, I'm pretty sure, topics for next meetings are always something we want to hear about and figure out, but we can talk about that after. So, with no further ado, Phil, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So my name is Phil Shapira. I work in Takoma Park at the public library. Our library is a Linux library. We have 28 stations for the public to use. We're open 7 days a week. It is an unusual library in that it's not part of any county system, so that it's available for Takoma Park residents. If you live outside of Takoma Park, you have to pay to get a library card. But come on by and visit regardless. It's fun to see Linux. Our computers are based on Fedora, and we purchase a commercial service called Userful. And it's a multi-station kind of thing where one computer runs either 4 or 6 stations. And I've been there 10 years. One thing that's really fun about my job is that people who come to the library to get things done I've only had one or two people say, this isn't Windows. They just come to the library, they get things done, and they leave. And our computer is so seamless. They use LibreOffice, which saves to Microsoft Word format, and they use Chrome, they use Firefox, they apply for jobs, and I'm kind of lucky. My hobby is my work, and so how many people can say that? When I yes. At my job, I'm able to talk a lot about open source to the public, and I'm kind of proud of the way I go about it. I don't say everybody should use open source. I say open source is a good thing to consider. It's less expensive. It runs well on older software. There tends to be almost no.
You mean older hardware?
Older hardware, right. It runs well on older hardware. I have in the back, you can see my Pentium 3 laptop, which has, I think, Linux Mint 12 on it. And that laptop is so fast, I'm trying to find suggestions on how I can slow it down. But it's cute to see like something that's 15 years old surfing the web, you know? We have to also try and imagine that in the world that we live in, there's some people in other countries that for them, a Pentium 3 laptop would be a dream come true. If you don't have any computer, if you're running a hospital in some place and there's just not enough computers, a Pentium 3, that could be your dream computer. And so if we can put Linux on it, we're going to be promoting health someplace far away. So let me start off with this interesting story. There's a company in Beltsville called PC Retro that sells secondhand computers. And I went to talk to them 10 years ago when I started this library job. And I said, you know, you ought to think about putting on Linux on some of the computers you sell. There's no license fee, and it runs well. And they were pretty responsive to my suggestion. And today, if you go to their stores, they have a ThinkPad that you can buy for $50. It's a R61 ThinkPad, Lenovo, from 2007. And they put on Ubuntu on it. So it's a nice, very usable computer, surfs the web wirelessly. And so I went into that store and I said, give me 7 of these. It's so cheap, I'll just resell them at the same price in my community, and people who don't have a laptop, they're gonna have a laptop. I tend to put on Linux Mint rather than Ubuntu, because that comes with Flash and Java. And sometimes I bump up the RAM. It comes with 512 megabytes of RAM, but it's pretty cheap to buy an extra gigabyte, so I bump it up to 1.5 gigabytes. It's about, I think, $10 to $12 to buy the gig. So I sold one of these laptops to a musician who comes to the public library. She's a jazz guitar player. Sorry, a blues guitar player. And she doesn't have internet at home, so she comes to the library and uses our computers. So now she's got this laptop, and I said, why don't you borrow my hotspot? I said, I've got a hotspot that'll give you a Wi-Fi network at your house, and my hotspot's from NetZero. I said, it's a low-cost hotspot, and if you use it wisely, you could have your email at home and come to the library for your YouTube. So she said, I'll give it a try. So NetZero, the hotspot, you can even pay $20 a month. They'll give you 1 gigabyte of data, I think 1 or 2. And then if you go up to $30 a month, they'll give you 3 gigabytes of data per month. And that's exactly what somebody needs who's like a light internet user at home. If they're careful, not listening to too much music or downloading too much software. So she can do her software updates at the library, because we have fast Wi-Fi at the library. So anyway, it's working out really well for her. And it's kind of cute that I supplied her with a very affordable laptop, and I supplied her with internet, and she's happy as a clam. She's happy as a clam that she's able to get stuff done at home. She tells me she does her booking. She plays her blues guitar at places around the country, and she does her bookings at home. And she doesn't have to come in at library hours to do that. So anyway, she's very happy, and I'm probably going to ask her as a favor to do a video shoot with her, talking about how open source has really opened her world to doing more computing at home in a way that she didn't expect that she was going to be doing. So now I brought something else for show and tell. I bought on eBay a little flip camcorder. These used to be popular 5 years ago, right? This little flip camcorder with one button. The last people who sold it was Cisco. This takes nice video. In fact, the video that I sent in the link, that music video some of you saw from the email list, that was shot with this video, this camera. And this camera cost 20 bucks on eBay. So I might do an interview with this woman, Eleanor, using this camera. And then I want to edit the interview on my Intel Compute Stick. So I've ordered one of the Linux Intel Compute Sticks, which costs $109. I think they changed the price to $99. I was on the Newegg website. I think they're changing the price, but there's been a delay. It's supposed to come in a month ago, but I'm getting it next week. But I like to use this very affordable tool with that affordable little computer, the tiny little computer, right? And then in terms of monitors, I'm always trying to find ways of doing everything at the lowest possible cost. I found this on Craigslist. Here's a monitor I bought for $20. It's a 20-inch monitor. So I bought this on Craigslist just yesterday or the day before. It's got a bit of a black spot over here, but the monitor works great. So here's a $20 monitor that I could use with my Linux Intel Compute Stick, which has, that's got HDMI out. So I have to use some kind of converter. HDMI to DVI converter would drive this thing, right? So we as people who love open source need to be able to explain this kind of stuff to people who are less technically skilled, but who need the knowledge to do the kind of scrounging that I like to do. So there's a role for each one of us. The thing I love about open source and Linux, I mean, it's coming at the world like a tidal wave. I think it's unstoppable. This $9 computer you heard about from Oakland, that's a huge deal. That's coming out next year. The size of a credit card, it runs Linux. I think open source it's coming at our society at a rapid pace. And I think there's an interesting role for each one of us to help those who are unfamiliar with open source kind of open up their eyes. I work in a library, so I think libraries is a great place for that kind of realization to happen. And I think from what I hear, the Fairfax libraries, they don't do too much Linux. But one thing we got to keep in mind is that the library is not owned by the managers of the library. The libraries are owned by us. It's our libraries. It's not their libraries. So we need to go in there and find the people in the library system who are interested in Linux. And that's a reference question. You walk up to the reference desk. You say, I'm curious to know, is anybody in this library system interested in open source software or Linux? And they'll either say yes or no. But if they continue to say no, that would be rather unusual, considering that Linux and libraries, they just like peanut butter and jelly, because it's all about expanding access to knowledge and to tools and to creativity. So I'm going to invite each of you to stop by your own public library. Try and befriend a library staffer who's interested in open source. And I'm available. I'll come out to any library and talk about open source. You see the T-shirt I'm wearing, opensource.com. This website is it's supported by Red Hat, and it celebrates open source in all of its different facets. Not just the software, not just the hardware, but as a cultural lifestyle, the collaborative cultural lifestyle. So stop by and visit opensource.com. You can set up an account there, as I suggested in the email that I sent out yesterday. So I want to tell you another story about open source advocacy. This was just from the past week or two at my job. Somebody comes up to me and says, I want to find out, I have my resume in Microsoft Word. Can I update it in LibreOffice? I said, almost guaranteed you can update it because LibreOffice opens up Microsoft Word documents. I said, the only way you might not be able to update it is if you have a lot of formatting in your resume. Then LibreOffice might not handle the formatting right. So he said, my resume does have a lot of formatting, and I think that this public library is not going to help me update it. He goes, but I need to update my resume to apply for this new job. So do you know what I told him? I said, come back tomorrow. I'm bringing my Windows 8 laptop with Microsoft Office, and you're going to update your resume on my laptop. Now, that was not a very typical thing for a Penguin, an open source believer, to say, I'm bringing, why don't we use Windows on this thing? But here's the point that I want everybody to think about. If he gets the job that he's hoping to get, he's going to remember who went to bat for him. And the person who went to bat for him was wearing a T-shirt that said opensource.com on it, So for those of us who believe in Linux and open source, we need to be able to think that the soft sell approach, which is my approach, the soft sell approach, can be the most powerful. And that the hard sell approach, you can shoot yourself in the foot. If you tell the person, you should change your resume so that it works with LibreOffice, that's the hard sell approach, and you end up shooting yourself in the foot. So I was pretty pleased. The guy was thrilled when he got his resume done. He was totally thrilled, and he's either unemployed or he's at a job that he doesn't want to be at, and I'm the route out of it. I'm the route to where he wants to be. I felt kind of proud that I didn't hesitate to say, for your purposes, let's use Windows. But we had an interesting conversation. I mean, I think he was surprised at how eager I was to acknowledge that his needs were not going to be met by open source on that day. So, yes, question.
Would the online version of Office work in that situation or no?
I think so, but is the online one free?
I try to push people
Yeah.
to use that.
Oh, is that yeah?
But there is an online version that is free, supported by Android.
But I don't know if it has all the features and stuff. I don't really use it. But
It probably does have the features. It's got advertising support. So that's a great question. Whether that, yeah. And I was thinking I could maybe send him over to Google Docs, but I don't think Google Docs is going to handle his he had some pretty complicated formatting.
Well, he said so. Did he try?
Why wouldn't he send his resume in PDF rather than, why would he want to send it out in an editable format?
he has to edit.
Oh, he needed to update it. So
Right.
yeah.
I mean, but once he figures the formatting
Right.
how he likes, it doesn't really matter what word processor he's using, even as long as he gives it as a PDF, so it's not going to break when the employer views it.
Right, but he had it currently in like a docx file that had some pretty complicated formatting that LibreOffice couldn't handle that formatting.
I mean, not even approximately.
Yeah, I think it was not even approximately. I mean, I think it looked ugly.
Right.
So you did try, and
He did try. He did try. He did try. So, here's another thing that, another little way that I'm doing some open source advocacy. I went out to Craigslist. I found one of those fast Acer Chromebooks, the C720. So somebody was selling one for $100. That's a pretty good price. They sell new for about $200. So I bought one of those, even though I already own one of them. I went out and bought it, and I said, I'm going to end up lending this to somebody who wants to try out a Chromebook. Now, Google ought to be partnering with public libraries so that libraries can loan out Chromebooks, like for a weekend or for use in the. Google hasn't gotten to the understanding yet that when people try out a Chromebook, they like it, and that they could really increase their market share a lot just by loaning it out. So anyway, there's this one young fellow in town who's currently not working, or he's working part-time. And he comes up to me and talks to me pretty regularly about different businesses that he wants to start. So he's got this entrepreneurial streak. And I said, listen, why don't you borrow my Chromebook for 2 or 3 months? I said, I want you to explore everything there is about this Chromebook. I want you to ask me questions, since I work at the library, since you come by the library. I said, at the end of the 3 months, we'll figure out what's going to happen next. I said, maybe I'll sell you the Chromebook. And then I said, you don't have to pay me $100. Why don't you buy it on installment? Pay me $10 a month. So here he has a really nice laptop. He's really, really happy. And I'm telling him where to go and learn stuff. He's bringing questions to me. I work at a library. I love it when people bring questions to me. So I'm opening up his world, but he's giving me something back in that he has become very fond of his Chromebook and can see it, as this is the tool I want to use in my life. So now, going forward, I can tell you some of the interesting stuff I want to be doing. There is this website that I sent in the link in the email yesterday. There's a website for online animation. It's called Animatron, Animatron. And best as I can tell, it gives you something that's a little bit similar to Adobe After Effects or Apple Motion. It's for the kind of swoopy eye candies kind of stuff. But you can import SVG graphics into either your animations that you make. So SVG, you can use Inkscape, the free vector graphics program, to make SVGs. So I currently have hired an animator to animate a children's story I wrote, and this animator is using Animatron. And part of the project is that she's not only drawing the characters, animating the characters, but she's going to make a screencast about how she's using this web service. So that the end result of all of this is that I'm going to have a YouTube video with my animated children's story. I'm going to have a second YouTube video showing how that story came to life from characters drawn in Inkscape and imported into this web service. And my hunch is that this is going to help people understand that here is a free vector graphics drawing program. You can run it with a free operating system. The free operating system you can use on donated free computers. So we got 3 things that are free, right off, and then there's a free version of the web service that you can use, and there's a paid version. But you could be doing 4 free things to take your ideas and make them animated for the web. So I'll be sharing the link on the NovaLUG email list, but I think it's going to be kind of exciting to see what this professional animator. I found this woman who does animations for a living, and we have a little contract, and she says that she's making good progress. But there's folks that I know who do a lot of Inkscape for their livelihood, and typically they're not doing animation stuff. They are doing SVG graphics for signs. The signs that sometimes hang on the side of a building? Those are sometimes drawn in Inkscape, or the signs that wrap around a car at a special event. You have these special kind of signs that use a cutter or some kind of plotter to make. So Inkscape is not typically used that much for animation, but when I saw this website and when I saw the possibilities of the website, and I realized that I was the missing link. I happen to like to write children's stories. Used to teach in Montgomery County public schools and elementary school, and I wrote a bunch of stories back then. So I was like the missing link between Inkscape and this website. Meanwhile, I've sent an email to the people who started the website. They're out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I think they're going to be surprised to see that somebody is so strongly supportive of their website. They might offer me if I were in their shoes, that they might offer me the professional version of the website and say, hey, you're coming in to support us. Why don't you have a free account here on the professional level? So. There's one other way that I think that's kind of creative, that we can create a bridge between people who are not familiar with open source and people who are kind of curious. It's possible to dual boot Macintosh computers, just like you can dual boot Windows computers, into Linux as well as the Mac operating system. And these days, the early Intel Mac laptops, the MacBooks, they sell for about $200 online. And so the opportunity here is to buy some of those, install Linux on them as a dual boot system, and then resell them at the same price you bought them for. So I'm lucky, I'm allowed to do Linux installs as part of my day job. So at my public library job, when I'm not helping the public, and sometimes, some days, my day is sometimes busy and less busy, but my supervisor is very comfortable with me doing Linux installs as long as it's not interfering with my helping the public. So I can be doing this kind of stuff while in my regular work day. And I like the idea of also, I'm investing my labor, and then somebody on the other side, they get the laptop at the same price that I bought it for. And presumably the laptops, when they sell them, if you buy them from an online vendor, it sometimes comes with a 6-month or 1-year warranty. So the person who's buying the laptop, they could always return it to you if something goes wrong. It doesn't have to be a risky endeavor on your part when you're kind of bringing Linux into somebody else's life. And I think it's really interesting for people to see a different operating system on familiar hardware. So they say, I'm familiar with what this laptop looks like when it's running Mac OS. Let me see what it looks like running Linux. And I can tell you, Linux is going to run very fast on Mac hardware. Chrome is going to boot faster. I was doing Chrome on my MacBook a couple years back. I think it started in 2 seconds, like boom. And this was not a solid state drive, just a regular hard drive. So it's good for the public to experience that. Being able to compare, of course, the best possible comparison that you could ever hope for is if somebody brings you a Vista laptop, Windows Vista, and they say, what can you do to make my computer faster? And you go, let me install Linux on here, but you say, I want your computer to be dual boot so that you can have the best of both worlds. You can use Vista and you can use Linux. I said, and why don't you try them out and see which one you like better? So Vista's going to be so sluggish. Yes?
My best success with that is I buy them another disk drive.
Okay.
I say, I don't want to risk messing up your Windows install.
Right.
So we'll just put Linux on this other drive.
Right.
And so all you got to do is I show them how to swap the hard drives.
Okay.
Whenever you want to switch.
That's a great idea.
So that is a little higher barrier to switching between the two
right.
than dual boot.
That's a great suggestion. You can also have a separate hard drive. You can have a separate hard drive, right?
Give them a live USB.
You can give them a live USB. Give them a live USB, right, and show them how to get into the BIOS, right? So I've been sharing some ideas like how do we create a bridge to people who might be receptive. And what's really interesting, yes?
Before you go there,
Yeah.
You're talking as if the end user cares whether it's open source or not. Is that
Right.
really true? do they really care what's underneath the hood
Right.
versus what they can do with it?
So that's the great question here from Peter, is do people actually care about open source as an operating system, as a principle, or do they just want to get work done?
Or just open source software in general?
Or open source job. Yeah, a lot of the members of the public, they just want to get things done, right? Yeah, they don't care that much, yeah.
They don't, and they have no reason to care about open source.
Right.
They usually don't, but they ought to care about open standards.
Right.
So it's not really a big deal that their word processor is proprietary, like Microsoft Word.
Right.
As long as it does what they do and they can afford it. What is a problem is when their proprietary word processor doesn't output or have the capability to easily output in standard formats.
Right.
And so that's what you look for in proprietary software, is working with standard formats.
They feel the pain of proprietary, of the lock-in, right? So if you don't keep the upgrades up to speed, or you want to buy a new printer, it's not compatible, because, as you said, the standards don't work. But I've never met a non-IT person that draws that line and can see the relationship of, if you have an open world where everything is available to you, you don't risk that it all of a sudden stops working because a vendor decided that they need to get new revenue, so they start a new standard up.
It does happen. Remember when email was first going public, all the public email providers for people that didn't have their home computer were proprietary. So you went with CompuServe, you could only send email to CompuServe users. And you went AOL, you could only send email to AOL users. And those of us who worked with the internet, we were like, this is crazy. What's the point of email that you can only send to people on the same service? And people didn't get it. But eventually people got it. And now no email provider can get away with offering email that only works with their own customer base. But we see them doing it with other protocols.
Did they do that because they could, or because that was the way the technology was back then?
No, they did. They had to go to extra effort to have it work that way. The same thing's happening now with instant messaging. Instant message is, IRC or XMPP or SIP-Simple. Those are all federated, interoperable protocols. But, and in fact, Facebook uses XMPP, but they write extra code to block messages from any other domain other than the Facebook.com domain. And now Google has decided to do the same thing. So they actually write extra code to make it not work, because the customers just don't realize that, no, it's not necessary for people to be on Facebook for me to be able to talk to them.
But But what they're doing, I agree with you. So to get me from the point of this, locking out a potential amount of customers is not there. But the reason for doing it is that they say we need these specific new protocols, these specific new features to be supported. That's what we want to sell it on. It's no longer just a text message. We want to be able to do all this other stuff. So in order for that to work, we have to ensure all of the clients are the same. And hence, it's our client that does all of that. And that's the selling point.
Because they can easily integrate, with that, they just say, well, if you're not on Facebook, all these extra features don't work.
That's true, but that's not the one.
That's actually a sales, a legitimate sales.
No, because that takes away their sales. Right? That's the whole point. If they can't get people in because they added those features, then all that work putting in those features goes away.
Well, let me tell you some more stories about we're in my public library where people are using Yahoo Mail and Gmail, and they come up to me and they say, how come my Yahoo Mail is not working right? I said, well, it's a free service, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. I said, you don't have a business relationship with the person who provides you your email. I say, I am thrilled that I pay for my email. There's a small ISP in Rockville. I pay them $50 a year, and I have a business relationship with them. And my email works guaranteed. And if I have a question, they've got a phone that I call. So I think the general public needs to be able to understand that their options, and I think the public library is a great place for people to understand options and to raise their awareness and consciousness. I don't know any other institutions other than newspapers and magazines or websites that where people are consumer-oriented websites to help people come to grips with the fact that if they're not seizing control of your life, if you're not seizing control of your life, somebody else is seizing control of your life. So you have to be active, you have to be a thinking person. Yeah.
First of all, a little story to kind of back up on certain things you've said. You have some interest here, and then I'm going to talk about a certain risk. About a year, maybe a few months more ago, Danny Ballman came in and said, hey, I need some help with the project. I'm down in Warrenton. Who can come down and help me in the lab? So that was me. And I said, I have to tell you, Danny, you may not be getting the best NovaLUG guy, but I'm the guy that's available. So off and on, we've been working on this little project. But this larger project, which has been going on for several years, is that he's been getting defunct computers, laptops from the Fairfield County public school system. And of course, a lot of these got turned over when, Windows 7 died and, everybody had to go to Windows 8. So he's gotten stacks of these things. And what's he do? He puts Linux Mint on.
Right.
So one of the reasons you said, but also Linux Mint is very good with languages.
Okay.
And what he's doing is he's taking computers no longer used in Fairfield County, putting Linux Mint on them and sending to 8 various schools down there. And so the first computer, these kids out there in this woe-begone place will ever touch will be a Linux computer. LibreOffice will be the first word processor they ever touch. Okay. And now what I've been working on is compiling and assembling a little server that would stand off the internet and provide Wiki and Gutenberg, and maybe I'll come talk about that next month. But the thing that I see in this is, as I've been working on this, a little research around the web here and there, you see that the same kind of thing is going on in Africa and lots of places in the third world, that people are getting technology, these people, and guess what? They're not going to be spending proprietary stuff. They're going to be sending, excess computers and free software. That means open source. Now, if the kid in Haiti, whose first computer is a Linux computer, guess where he's going to go on? Kid in Fairfax County, first computer, Windows. Well, guess what? We're going to be falling behind the United States.
I do think so.
Yeah.
In Brazil, Brazil has 50 million students using Linux.
Right. And so I think we've all come to love open source.
Right.
The first attraction is free. Second, they can control it on and on. I mean, there's lots of things to love about it.
First, free as in money, and then all of a sudden it's free as in liberty afterwards. That comes later, right?
Yeah. But I mean, and for us as geeks, we can tinker with it. We like it. But that's not much of a selling point for someone who's not a geek.
Right.
But free is. But I'm just saying that the overall longer-term analysis on this is that if people get stuck in proprietary operating environments, you fall behind.
Especially with this.
Genius. It's a poor kid in a remote village in Brazil right now.
Right. Especially when we have this $9 Linux computer coming out, and they've had a year or two experience using Linux on a laptop, then it's the same Linux. I mean, it's the same. The skills will transfer to this very affordable thing. From what I understand, Google's going to be bringing in the internet, the balloons, so that might reach Haiti, even in remote areas. So when the internet's either free or low cost, and the computer costs $9, then the next interesting challenge is how do we design a very affordable monitor that is also ecological? Because when they're done with it, we don't want it to be polluting.
Right. But that's part of the reason you see a lot of these older boxes going abroad.
Right.
Is it might be functional, but it's just out of date, right? We can't find new, good software for it. But it's a great way of getting away from the trash pile,
Right.
and still being useful. So it's instead of throwing stuff out just because it's 5 years old,
Right.
it can get new life.
Did you know you can connect up the Raspberry Pi to an early Kindle, and they call it Kindleberry Pi? I'm not kidding you. Look it up, Kindleberry Pi. And the Raspberry, the Kindle, the early ones, they use very little electricity.
Mhm.
Very little electricity.
The Kindle's your monitor.
As the monitor, right? The Kindle becomes your monitor for your Raspberry Pi. It's totally possible to do that, and then it becomes a makerspace project of how do we have the bicycle that's powering the computer?
You
Because
don't want a bicycle.
what?
You can't type while you're pedaling.
Oh no! Oh, you have the
For
separate
working on a
kit.
computer,
Right.
you want a treadle,
A treadle. Okay,
sewing
treadle.
machine treadle.
Okay.
And
Or solar.
you can
Or
use
solar.
any drill that is, the battery's died, the motor
Right.
makes a perfect generator that's the right size for a treadle.
That's
A
right.
treadle generates 25 watts easily.
Okay.
A bicycle can generate up to 300 watts, depending on how in shape you are.
Right.
But you can't really.
Yeah, that treadle sounds great because with the new kind of low power usage electronics coming out, we don't need 100 watts. And also, you can almost think, in a school setting, you can have some students generating electricity and the others using computers.
PE gets a new definition, right?
Right.
New purpose.
So I think open source is so exciting, and too often individuals who love open source, you might say, what can I as an individual, I can't really do all that much to advance open source. And I'm here today to tell you that as an individual, you can. That there's this tipping point coming, and there are lots of small things that each of us, when we get together, I hope some of you went and made it an account or registered at opensource.com. So that's a very interesting website. Every week, I think they publish about 100 new articles. Some of them are written by Red Hat employees. Some of them are written by just submitted. Anybody can submit something. They have a professional copy editor over there. So if you want to write something, you don't have to say, oh, I'm not that good at writing. All you have to be good at is thinking about a topic, and write a rough draft and send it to them. They'll clean it up. And that website is heading towards having 1 million page views per month. Currently gets about 600,000. So each one of us here in the room has a role to play. Tell some of your friends or family that there's a website called opensource.com, and that they should just stop by and see if any of the articles there are interesting to them.
Gotta point out, it's not just about Red Hat.
Yeah, it's sponsored by Red Hat, but you'll see Ubuntu stuff and all sorts of things, right? I'm a volunteer community moderator for the website. So about 3 or 4 years ago, I think I sent them my first submission, and they invited me to be a moderator. I don't get paid, but they treat me really well, and they fly me down to Raleigh once a year to the All Things Open. There's a wonderful conference in Raleigh called All Things Open. It's very affordable. They keep the prices cheap as possible so that the most number of people can show up. And so I go to the All Things Open conference, and I get to meet the other moderators. There's about 10 to 15 moderators. I think open source in Linux is here to stay, and it's going to be a bigger and bigger deal. I love the idea that here we have this gorgeous makerspace, so that there's opportunities to get together and explain stuff this is our own public library now. This is like, we don't ask permission for anybody to, the people who are running Nova Labs, they understand open source, It's, we don't have to spend time trying to convince them that this is something worth of the space.
Well, I think it's the other way around. These guys would not be here if
Yes.
it wasn't for open source.
That's true. And do you know what I try and do? It's a good tactic. I try and equate the maker movement with the open source movement. So I say the maker movement, which is also called the open source movement. I could say that at the public library. It's not entirely true, but it's true in my mind. And people who come to talk to me at the public library, they trust me. I speak a lot of truth. So I say there's something called a maker movement, something called open source movement. I said it's two sides of the same coin. In some ways, it's the same movement to seize back control of things that were taken away from us because we were not aware they were being taken away from us. So we can seize back control and have fun in the process. Make new things, build a new society that is more on a participation model. Here's something real interesting to consider. Newspapers have done a pretty poor job of adapting to the digital world. So the Washington Post, they set up, I think, their first website in 94, 95. The exact year that they set up their website, they could have set up a section of the website for op-ed pieces, for like editorials written by the public. That's kind of curated because a website doesn't have the limitations of print. They can even charge. You could say, send us an editorial of something. If we like it, we're going to charge you $25 so that it's going to be copy edited and then it's going to be on our website. So it doesn't have to be a burden on them to like provide the copy editing. They just are the forum, right? But they missed that opportunity. That was like 20 years ago. They missed that opportunity for participation. And sadly, our newspapers, they're closing down because they maintain the old model of doing things, and the old model just didn't adapt to the new ways of, people these days don't subscribe to newspapers. The younger generation doesn't do that. So
It's not because of the format, it's because of the content.
it's the content too, right, yeah. So, but I think we can, step by step, we can work towards a more participatory world. And I think the LUGs, the Linux user groups, we've got a role to play in helping other people understand. Get together, share ideas, share your questions. Like, here's an interesting thing. I bought this monitor here. I had this adapter. I thought this adapter was going to work with this monitor. This is a DVI to HDMI adapter. I plug it in, it doesn't quite fit. And I know there's different kinds of DVI. And maybe somebody here in the club, after my talk today, can help me figure out, maybe I need to buy a different adapter. I thought this was going to work, but imagine this, with the Raspberry Pi, the version 2, it's already quite fast. There's going to be a Raspberry Pi version 3. It's going to be even faster. It's going to probably be at the same price, right? We need to start organizing ourselves so that some kid someplace gets their first computer and that some friend of the child, maybe their parents don't have the money to buy $35. It's surprising, but there are some parents who don't have $35 to pay for a child's computer. Then some friend of the family is going to buy that $35 computer, and we as a Linux user group, we're going to supply the monitor, the keyboard, and the mouse for free. How do we get it for free? Because we collected it. We collected it from people who wanted to give it away. So that's my little spiel for today. Questions? I invite anybody to come visit me over in Takoma Park. I'm there from like 2 to 8 most days, Monday through Friday. Takoma Park, Maryland is the public library where I work. And
Hippie.
yeah, hippie heaven. Well, it kind of makes sense that Linux is big in that town because Linux is towards a more inclusive world, and as a town, it's a very It tends to be a very inclusive place. We have 92 nationalities in Takoma Park, 92. It's a small town. That doesn't happen very often unless the town itself has a very inclusive, that's the way we do things.
It's a nuclear-free zone,
It's nuclear free.
so
right.
crazy place.
Yeah.
A comment about your
Yeah.
adapter.
Yeah.
On a similar thread, I got a new monitor that
Right.
also is a TV.
Right.
And things weren't fitting on the screen.
Okay,
You know, it was shrinking out
Right.
the sides. Like, no matter what I did, it didn't work. The guy says, try a DVI cable
okay,
instead of an HDMI
okay,
or the old type of cable.
okay.
And that solved the problem. Why? I don't know. I think it's because that particular monitor
Right.
also was a television.
Oh, that's right. Some of the monitors are also televisions, right?
Yeah. And so,
We have DRM.
They might have DRM, digital rights management, yeah.
no, it's just the
Yeah.
physical electronic.
No,
Pretty
well,
sure.
no, what happens is with this high definition, there is a DRM protocol. So the television simply refuses to display high definition content without the proper cryptographic keys and
Yeah.
stuff similar.
Oh,
to
so HDMI has DRM, but DVI doesn't?
Right.
Okay, DVI doesn't have DRM,
So
but
in your
HDMI
case,
does.
you wouldn't get a picture.
So if you change
I got a
it to
picture. It just was physically shrunken in. It was,
Oh, okay, yeah, that's not a DRM issue.
no. So, another question.
Yeah.
What do you do for people come in and they have, and this question came up on the NovaLUG listserv recently. They have old files they want to resurrect, like
Right.
Word Perfect.
Oh, right.
I recently did it by, I found an online service that would do
Zamzar.
something like that.
Yeah, there's an online file transfer,
What do
file conversion
Converter,
service. Yeah, it's totally free, zamzar.com. Very good for taking anything to anything. Right.
So it resurrected old content for me.
There's one thing that, in the talk, there's a big difference between, you know, the word free is
Right.
ambiguous in English.
Right, yes,
And so a lot of these things are gratis,
right,
you don't pay cash for them.
right.
But open source is not,
Restricted, not restricted, right,
right, and gratis is never libre.
right,
There's always a catch when you're using a free service.
Right.
And your free stuff is never gratis. When you use open source software, you're not paying money for some support service. The catch is that you spend time self-supporting.
Yeah.
And asking the community, you know, you spend more time self-supporting than you would if you were paying someone to just be on hand to solve your problems.
But I can tell you this, there's a great role for libraries to help people self-support. I had this high school student, I think he's 11th to 12th grade, and he comes up to me, he goes, my computer at home, my mom spent a lot of money a year ago, it's no longer working, and he goes, he was just looking worried. I said, you've got two choices. You can fix it yourself or you can take it to the store and get it fixed. I said, which one do you want to do? He said, well, I want to try and fix it. I said, what are the symptoms? He goes, well, I turn on the computer, it beeps at me. I said, you need to get online and say, my computer with this manufacturer beeps at me when I turn it on. He comes back the next week, he goes, I fixed it. It was a CMOS battery. The CMOS battery needed changing, but he came to the library because he knew I cared about him. But here's the interesting part. All through high school, he didn't come to me with questions. Like, now he's heading off to college or after high school, but I was a resource that he only appreciated in an emergency. But now that he had, you know, now he sees me in a different light. He's like, hey, maybe I should have gone to him first rather than go to him last. So, and of course his mom is thrilled. He's not having to pay for getting something fixed, and she doesn't have to drive, you know, to some store. So that was an interesting thing where I, as a library person, could support him in his becoming more self-reliant. But these refurbished computers are great for self-reliance because the youth who get them don't have to have any concerns about opening it up. It's like the computer's free, you know, I'm either going to fix it or not fix it. And my parents can't get upset that I've broken something because it came in as a free computer. So the refurbished computers are a great way of supporting people's curiosity and making them into that kind of hackers that we want them to walk in here later and say, oh, you guys are just like me. You like to open things up. So
being a devil's advocate a little
yes.
bit, isn't that the actual problem with open source, that you want everyone to do a self-support? Again, I go back to the idea, when I talk to non-IT people, they just want it to work, right? I hate using the car, but to me, I don't know what's going on behind the scene other than I know there's an engine and I have a sort of idea how it works. That's it. If it doesn't work, I take it to a mechanic. I meet people all the time that do the same with IT, right? They just want to use it as a tool. When they're done, they leave, and they have really no at all interest in figuring out how it works. As long as the tool works.
So that is a good devil advocate position. There are many people in our society who don't want to understand the inner workings of their computer. They don't want to tinker. Well, what I would have to say to that is we need to show them how fun and rewarding it can be to tinker with the Raspberry Pi. There's Raspberry Pi on the other side of here.
But it might not be fun to them. A better analogy is with your car. You want a car that can only be serviced at the dealer.
Right.
Or you want a car where you can take it to any mechanic to have it serviced, so you can shop for the best service.
That's a good analogy.
So we've had that for a long time in the IT. I could take it to, I can take my laptop to pretty much any computer store.
No, they can't. Most computer stores only do Windows.
Well, again, you're choosing your stuff. I don't have to go to Microsoft authorized dealers of IT to get my Microsoft computer serviced.
You do for Apple.
You do for Apple.
That's now okay. We go now in a different name, right? But I've been able to for a long time with my computer as a non-IT person to go to any IT store to get them done. And if they have the Apple sign out there, they don't necessarily say authorized, they'll fix that. That's what you pay extra money for, is to have that nice logo on there, right? So they can all go around with their little geek shirts and all that and look like they know a lot, but all they do is send it down somewhere else to get it fixed, right? But that's fine. But in essence, my point is, I would never stop tinkering. That's what drives me. And I think anyone in this group, that's what sort of brings us in here, because we learn from each other and figuring out how to tinker. But very few of the people that I serve care about that. And I don't know.
They want it to just work.
They have a more important job to do, right? I'm a nurse. I need my machine to work at the hospital so I know what medicine to give.
Then those kind of people, we can still send them towards an open source solution, but it's more like a Chromebook. They want something to work. The Chromebook is just.
But they need someone to service that. Right. So that goes back to the other thing that you talked about, right? You can put it to a library, but who maintains it at the library? Because I know from the libraries, at least down where I live, they can't even find people to do it on the Windows. They have no money to do it. Right. But the library personnel have no clue how to do it. They're good at books, not IT.
You mentioned this company that they use at his library.
Yeah, so there is at our library, we don't support our own computers. There's a company in Calgary, Alberta, that remotely comes in and supports a computer. We pay a contract for that.
If you have the money and they have the money to do that.
And one thing that's amusing about Calgary, Alberta, is that when we call them in February, I look up Calgary, the world weather map, and Calgary, Alberta is sometimes the second coldest place on the planet. There's like, they could have like -30. That's where they live. Anyway, they're supporting our computers. But I do think, let me tell you my own ideas about where technology in public libraries is heading. I would like to see the library not provide the computer. I'd like to see the library provide a nice monitor that you can do graphics on. And I'd like to see the library provide the the bandwidth, and some tech support, some, not a lot of, some tech support. But I think everybody ought to be, people ought to be carrying their computer on a stick, 20 or 30 or $50 stick. And if you're very low income, the library is going to help support you buying the stick. So the library, it's cheaper for the library these days. Is a smaller and smaller section of people who don't have a computer at home. In Takoma Park, where I live, my estimate is about 25% of the residents don't have a computer at home, but about 75% do.
So in your scenario, don't you worry about security and carrying Trojans in on the stick, et cetera?
Well, that's the idea, is that the stick would just be maybe Wi-Fi stick, Linux. I don't know if
But you can still have Trojans on Linux.
yeah.
If people bring in an unknown device,
Right.
whatever's on that device, you don't know.
Yeah, I guess so. But but there's nothing to
Library's
affect.
just providing the monitor.
The library's just providing out the computer. Just
But the stick computer, I mean, you always, all your data, all the what's running is on that stick, right?
right. Yes, right.
So if you plug it into that network, now that stick has access to the network. So whatever it's on there, you can now, it can
could
do whatever it wants to do.
It
You
could
can already
propagate.
do that with the library now. There's no reason, I mean, people bring in unknown devices into the library and sit down and use their network.
Perfect, yeah.
Mhm.
I can tell you this: we haven't had any real issues with having an open Wi-Fi
I've
network.
even had to hack the network, like when using the public school network, they block everything except, that they think they're blocking everything except the port
Yeah.
80 and 443. So I had to set up a tunnel over port 443 so I could get real internet through the library.
Any other questions or comments or ideas? Yes.
Your Linux laptop at your library or computers at your library, do they like reboot into a clean system every time?
Yes, they do.
They do.
They do. Yeah. As soon as you log out, there's no trace whatsoever.
It's got kiosk mode.
No trace whatsoever of the websites you've gone to or any of the work you've done. So if people don't save their work to a flash drive, we give them 2 hours. And it's happened, this high school student said, I've been working here 2 hours. I logged out, where's my files? I said, if you don't have it on a flash drive or it's sent to your email as an attachment, I said, then you don't have any file anymore. And I said, we provide the computers, but we don't provide the storage, And it's interesting, sometimes it's a hard lesson, learn the hard way.
So that's a very good policy.
It is a good policy.
Yeah. And you only burn yourself once and then you've learned it,
Right.
right?
So you don't find many people using Google Drives and Google Docs.
That most
Oh.
likely is blocked.
No, actually, Google Drive and Google Docs is popular in the schools,
Yeah.
and I'm seeing more and more of our elementary and middle school students come in, and they pick up on their writing that they started at school, they continue it at the library.
Mhm.
It's really cool.
That would
Just
get around the storage problem.
totally gets around the storage problem, and it's ideal because think about it this way: they might have 15 minutes at school at the end of a class where they're going to do some writing. Then they come to the library, they do an extra 10 minutes there,
Man.
and so that's 25 minutes. And then at home, they finish it up with 20 minutes work, and they have 3 different locations without, all they have to do is log into Google Docs. The one thing that we have at the library that isn't so good is our computer room allows, we have 2 computer rooms. One is a talking room and one is a quiet study room. But we keep the kids out of the quiet study room after school because adults need to apply for jobs or take exams. So for the kids, the students, their only choice is like a noisy room with other kids. And it's hard to get real
Work done.
real homework done in that room. But they can also bring their own Chromebook and sit in the library. But not that many students are carrying around their own laptops these days. Sometimes I see these students with a really big, heavy backpack. And so I said, is your backpack all filled up with Kindles? Pretty funny joke. As if they would carry like 20 Kindles, By the way, did you know that ebooks add weight to a Kindle? If you have a Kindle with 50 ebooks and a Kindle without 50 ebooks, the one with ebooks weighs more? Did you know that? A little bit. I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding. It does.
I think I would check the weight.
Check the weight.
I want to have a blind test on that one.
It does weigh more.
A lot of hot air.
That's a different world.
So, this is my first time over at NovaLUG. I love the space.
Oh, yeah.
I love the space. And I'm really
It's because to have that many ebooks, you have to put in a micro SDHC.
no, I don't. Electrons. At my public library job, the kids, they want to get food from the munchie machine. The library refuses to give them change because they're too busy answering reference questions. So the kids come up to me and they say, "Can I get change like for a $5?" I said, "Sure." I stop by the bank and I get a lot of $1 bills on the way to work. And I said, "But before you get your change, you have to answer like a math question." And so
Oh, you are evil.
but I make up really fun math questions and I give them a hint. And then after they get the change, I said, "By the way, there's one extra thing. After you bring your snack back here," I said, "I want 1 molecule of your snack." And so they bring the snack over and I go, "Can I have a molecule?" I go, "That was such a good molecule." And I go, "I'm stuffed." So it's fun. You know, I work at this library, but I'm an educator at the library. So, I mean, I'm kind of a positive force in the students' lives. I also help a lot of adults, but I'm totally unsupervised. You know, I don't have a curriculum. It's just me and students, and I tell you, there's some very interesting students who come by. One 8th grade girl is really interested in quantum mechanics. She took a class at Yale last year online on quantum mechanics. And this other boy, he's middle school, he's interested in string theory. And I love physics, but I don't love modern physics. It's too hard for me to understand. So, you know, I tell him, "Talk to me about classical physics. I love that stuff." But it's neat that they come to the library and that I try and support them. That, you know, I try and let them know that they're not weird to be interested in quantum mechanics in middle school, that it's not typical, but they're not weird. It's just, that's their interest. Yeah.
You mentioned Google Drive.
Yep.
And this is another instance of where we have what should be a federated service. Like those of us who are geeks, we use Red Hat's own drive, you know, or own cloud.
Own cloud, right.
And we don't, it's just bad, although it's hard to explain to people why, to have some giant corporation hold your data hostage.
Right.
And so, but how, for people who are non-geeks, how are they going to have a more distributed, decentralized approach? Like with my family, you know, they use my server at home.
Right.
And so that's no problem, but how?
Can they use that when they travel outside your home?
Yeah.
So you have it published? I mean, you said you have a home server.
Published server, yeah.
Okay, so I can't do that legally with my ISP. That's why I'm asking.
It's in California, and Florida, and Missouri, and Alaska. So, yeah, that's, and it has a backup on the machine in Florida. So it's you know, globally distributed. And so one thing people could do that it still requires a lot of knowledge is use these cloud services. You know, like DigitalOcean for $5 a month. You get a small server and you can you know, put a lot of stuff on there, but you have to know how to do it. So I don't know what this, ideally there should be a lot of small companies so people would have more choice. They wouldn't be turning to Google to store their stuff on necessarily.
I think we've hit upon a possible follow-up topic to today's topic, and it would be cool to have like a little panel here, bring in a very nice camcorder. So it's nice that we're archiving this one today, but wouldn't it be neat to have like a NovaLUG NovaLUG talk and presentation about the importance of going one step beyond the obvious choice. So Google Drive is an obvious choice. It brings value. It doesn't cost anything. But there's something better than that. The public hasn't heard of the better. But we need to be able to explain as a LUG that there's something that gives you more freedom and more desirability. But we should try and, now, I'm a video hobbyist and I can hear some humming here. So maybe this isn't the right setting to shoot nice video, like a little panel discussion. Maybe we find someplace else. But I like the setting otherwise.
An open source sound filter.
Maybe.
See, the humming's going to have a regular pattern that can be filtered out.
You think with Audacity? Maybe with Audacity. Anyway. Well, thanks for having me come by. I hope I gave you some stuff to think about. And if you want to follow what I'm up to, I'm busy on Twitter. I'm Phil Shapiro on Twitter. I'm in touch with a lot of folks in other states and countries who love open source. Thank you.
We're done way early. Any announcement from anyone about jobs or anything else they want to say while we're all here?
Has everybody seen a tour of the facility? Do they all? This is an amazing facility. So I'll tell you a little bit about what I know about Nova Labs. They had a humble origin, but with a big vision, and then they were in a different location. Now they have the less humble location, and they have some supporters, some corporate supporters, but lots more is possible now that they have these supporters. And this could be a very thriving makerspace, not just for Reston, but for the DC area. You know, this is well worth my driving from Maryland to come over here. This is well worth the drive. Well worth the drive. So.